idea what she's talking about? Okay. Good to know. Then we will kind of start at the very beginning because, it's a great place to start. You can see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Okay. So right now at St. Scholastic, you have two of the text help programs. You have Read and Write, which is a literacy support toolbar that's going to pretty much go with students wherever they go, on their desktop, out on the web. When we say literacy, it's going to support reading, it's going to support writing, it's going to support their studying, comprehension, research, all of that. You also have Equatio, which is our digital math and STEM program. So it's going to help you in the Disability Resource Office get students accommodations if students need a different way to do math. It's going to help with any of that STEM textbook accessibility, assessment, test, exam conversion into more accessible content. But then when you think broader across campus, it can actually be a way for faculty to create accessible content from the ground up as well. They can just make it innately more accessible. So kind of the third tool that was just recently released in July is OrbitNote. And what it is it's our new dedicated PDF reader. So prior to July, with your Read and Write subscription, you had a built-in PDF reader that was just called PDF reader because we're all so creative around here. And what we found is that we had so many schools, higher ed, K-12, you name it, that just didn't know it was there as a resource. They didn't know it came with Read and Write. It was its own kind of separate thing, even though it looked and felt the exact same as Read and Write. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board and went, this is a problem if schools don't know what it is. So what we did was we worked with a bunch of schools, talked to a lot of people. On top of that, the pandemic hit and PDF usage went through the roof. In the first 3 months of the pandemic, PDF usage skyrocketed 3 times over for us. And the PDF reader that was built into Read and Write just wasn't going to sustain us with what we had coming and the change in education. And that's where OrbitNote came from, is its own dedicated PDF tool that now has an infrastructure that is much more robust to be able to support students, as well as for you all to know it's kind of its own separate thing, which some people, it's confusing because it's separate than Read and Write. It's got a separate name. But what you need to know is that you have access to OrbitNote because you have Read and Write. We did not want to take away the PDF reader from you all. You all have been using it. Students have been using it. We just wanted to give you a better, more robust tool. So essentially, you have Read and Write, you have Equatio, and now you have a version of OrbitNote as well for students. So when we created OrbitNote, essentially we, like I said, wanted to make sure it was a dedicated PDF reader, and we wanted it to be an accessible, dynamic way for students to interact with PDFs, whether that be one-on-one for students reading textbooks, if students are reading content from their faculty, if students wanted to share things in class. So again, we can see it kind of from that one-on-one student level, from that needed accommodation to kind of wider support as well, where students could complete assignments or assessments and share them with their faculty. The toolbar and the tools are going to be very similar to Read and Write, and what we call that is feature parity. It's the exact same tools you were used to in the PDF reader. We just kind of freshened up the look, and when our new Read and Write toolbar gets refreshed as well, which we've been working on for a long time, it'll look similar to these new kind of more mature looking features is what I hear people say. Like they just look a little bit more grown up and adult like, which is perfect for our college students. But the same features are there. The play button is still there. The stop button is still there. We still have the highlighter tools. We do have the annotation. So we haven't lost anything at all. It's just a new name for the same tool you're used to using. The only difference is the translation tool has a new icon that maybe lets you know a little more what we're doing here, as opposed to kind of the arrows crossing. People were like, what are we crossing arrows on? This is what it is. So again, it's the exact same, it's just a different name, and you have access to it. One of the big changes with OrbitNote compared to the PDF reader, which again you have access to, is a dashboard, which I'll show you here in a minute. It's a way for students to just kind of have a landing spot to go to when they want to open up a PDF, but they can also open it up directly from their Google Drive, from their LMS, out on the web. It doesn't matter. We just wanted to have kind of a landing spot for students with some resources as well, which are here. For you all, because you have read and write currently, as I said, you get a version of Orbit Note. So right now, column 3 is what you want to be looking at. Because you have premium read and write, you have free Orbit Note that comes with your read and write subscription. So you have text to speech, you have the highlighters, the commenting. Again, I'll walk you through all of this. Annotations, highlighters, all of that. But what we can do, which is what came out about a week ago, which is why Jessica emailed me to meet with you all, is this premium version of Orbit Note. And right now today, the only real feature that if for higher ed is a big deal for Orbit Note Premium is this built-in OCR feature, which I have in blue here. That's what is really going to set you apart from having this free version today, which you have now, to if you wanted to upgrade to premium, it would include. And essentially what it is, student, you, faculty opens a PDF with an Orbit Note. It's going to take a look at it and say, not seeing any text on this page. I bet this is an imaged PDF. And at the top of the page, it's actually going to prompt the user and say, hey, do you want to scan this PDF? With one click, people can then scan the PDF. It'll overwrite the PDF if it's in somewhere like Drive, OneDrive, things like that, Google Drive. And then it will be that readable PDF. For some schools, this is going to be a game changer because of the fact that they feel like they're constantly chasing their tails to get those accessible, I should say readable PDFs in students' hands. Faculty are posting tons of content. Students are doing research online independently, and we can't guarantee that everything's readable. So this is kind of an easy way to help with that. So that's the real big difference. We do have other features on the horizon that are coming. We're going to continue to build in some free features that you all will get access to, again, because you have read and write already, but then there will be some more like integrations with LMSs as LTI integrations, which may be beneficial for you, may not in higher ed. It's going to be something that's going to be more of a case-by-case basis. But for higher ed right now, this is the ticket. It's going to be that OCR feature. Any questions on that? Okay. So the other bonus with this, and you already have access to this because of having Equatio, Equatio does actually work in Orbit Note. So I'll show you that as well. So just again, because you have Orbit Note, because you have read and write, Equatio does play nicely with Orbit Note as well. So if students are doing textbook question problem sets, if faculty are sending students exams, if students are taking exams in your office or at home, they can use Equatio to actually put those answers, work onto that PDF and share it with their faculty. So something to know that we made sure that all of these tools kind of work together seamlessly. We kind of talk about it like a s'more in a way, like the campfire s'more, like we want to make sure they all go together well. So questions on this? It's pretty straightforward. We tried to make this as easy of a transition as possible because we didn't want this to be confusing for anyone. Okay, let me actually show it to you. So I'm just in my Google Drive. Y'all are at Google Campus. I can go into any PDF at any time and get it into Orbit Note in a few different ways. I can right click on the PDF, go open with, and if I have my extension installed, I can simply click Orbit Note and it's going to shoot it over to the PDF reader, just like you used to do with the PDF reader that we had before. It's just now called Orbit Note. So it's just for students to know they're going to have to use that instead. And it'll load up. There it is. I have an anatomy textbook. Boom, it's in. I could also elect to do the preview option here. Oh, doesn't like that one. Let's try this one. There we go. I could at the top here then choose Orbit Note as well. It's just sort of an extra step. Either one, again, it's going to shoot it over into Orbit Note. Boom, it opens. The third way I can get into it is in the dashboard. This is the dashboard that I mentioned. It's just by going to orbit.texthelp.com, you'll be able to get to the Orbit Note dashboard. It's going to have the ability for students to drag and drop a PDF if they have it like on their local drive of their computer and their documents are on their desktop. They can quickly, easily drag it, drop it. It'll open it in Orbit Note. If they've signed in with Google, y'all are Google Campus, it'll show up here. For our Microsoft schools, it'll actually allow them to pull from OneDrive. This is something that just came to us about a week ago with our big update. And then there's some resources down here at the bottom too. Students don't have to install the extension, but by doing so, it gives them that option to do open with Orbit Notes. So I always encourage students. Some schools who think that there's too many extensions that you have to install with read, write, Equatio, all of that, this is a way to get around it. They can just bookmark Orbit Note. There we go. They don't actually have to have that extension installed. But again, you can quickly and easily open it from Drive that way. Shoot you to a video playlist and then our support page as well. Questions on the dashboard? Pretty straightforward.
Playlist, just how to use the support. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Videos on our playlist of how Orbit Note works. Exactly. Yep. If I head over to PDF, this is a picture of a textbook, obviously. All those features that I'm used to in Read and Write are going to be here. I can obviously click and highlight the text, have it played aloud if I want, just like before. I can use the click to speak option to have that read aloud.
In this chapter, we describe the composition and functions of this life system.
We have our built-in dictionaries as we had before. I don't know what, the word fluid means. There it is. I've got my built-in dictionary with one click, more complex dictionary definitions as we go down. Any of them can be played aloud.
Adjective.
Picture dictionary, if students ever need that, either for kind of just studying, recall, kind of hitting that other part of the brain, or for our international students who might need a visual picture. We do have the screenshot reader, so if there is something in here that students can't read because it isn't OCR, that is an option. But again, I'll show you that new OCR feature. Our translate tool, so if we ever need to translate to another language, we can choose that with a click of a button, and again, have any of those read aloud. Our ability to create that vocabulary list, so by going through with our highlighters, we can strategically grab certain words that might be things we need to create a study list of. One click, vocab, sends it over. Is this a review to you all? Or is this good review? Or how you
Helpful.
I've never seen this
Helpful.
before.
Helpful.
Good, good, good. Am I going too fast?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Our screen masking, this is going to be really great for, just following, tracking, screen fatigue, TBI, concussion. Again, we can have it be this color overlay over the screen that I have as gray in totality, or I can have the reading light. Any of this can be adjusted and changed. I can choose maybe a green hue. I maybe know what color works really well based on my hex code. I could throw that in, or I can quickly and easily choose another color that works for me. And then the mask, reading mask color as well, that I could change to maybe a yellow, for example. And any of these I can change the opacity of, so I can make it more or less see-through. Reading light, I can change how thick or as thin it is, or I can get rid of the reading light altogether and just have that. So I think about students who maybe had that ruler, or I have a hack that I've used with some of my students where I'll actually turn the background opacity pretty dark, turn the reading light on. And it's a way for them to self-quiz if they have like a study guide. So they have the actual, question and then the answer below it. Go through, they can recite the answer, check their answer, and literally kind of buggy through that, as opposed to just rereading that text over and over again. So kind of a fun way to use this tool. Turn that off. And then we have our basic highlighters. Again, I can go through, highlight, hopefully doing it in a way that is meaningful. Maybe pink is our main idea, blue are our vocabulary words, maybe yellow are supporting details. We're not just making it look like a rainbow blew up on our screen. And then much like the vocab list, we can pull this into another document to study from. Again, if we've taken that time to be thoughtful about reading, done that strategic highlighting and reading from the get-go, we can then use this as a way to study moving forward, as opposed to going back and just rereading that content. And it will link us up to where it went. We can organize this by color. We can organize it by what came first in the document, second, third. Again, whatever makes the most meaning for a student. Questions on any of those? Awesome. And then last up are our annotation tools. We have 4 of them. We have our shapes, so students can quickly and easily create shapes around things. Again, much like our other features, we can change the color. We can fill it to be a different color if we want, or just have it be something that is open, circle, line. We can do some freehand drawing. So maybe I want my freehand drawing to be in blue. Or maybe there's something that's really important. I want to circle it, for example. Our text tool, this could be where I leave a note for myself. I need to study this more later. I can type it out. I can increase or decrease the font size. I can also change the color of the text as well. And if I'm a student who needs some of that extra support, specifically around reading and writing, we do have the play button to have it played back to us, just like anything else in the document. The dictation tool is here, so I as a student could dictate my answer or my note to myself, or word prediction as well, which we see used a little bit in higher ed, not a lot. As soon as I'm done, I click out of it. It's on the screen for me to see later. If I need to leave myself a note but don't want to see it, this is another option. Those same features are there, but it goes away. But we have this push pin that anytime I click, it'll open up for me. Questions?
So it's similar to read write in a lot of ways.
Correct. It's just its own PDF reader. It's got all the same features for students. Again, we didn't want to be confusing. We didn't want to take anything away.
So do you see this as, we give the access to students, then they have the PDF from the instructor, and instead of us changing it into a readable PDF, they can just go in and click and do it. Is that the best?
You could absolutely do it that way. So for example, here's a textbook chapter. Maybe this is one that you gave a student and hasn't been OCR'd. Or it's something that they've found themselves. Maybe it's a journal article. It's not recognizing that there's text on the page. So this is exactly what the kind of premium feature is. So everything I showed you up until this moment has been what you already have. This is what the new feature would be. And this is what it's telling you. We didn't find any text in this. Hey, do you want to scan? And then it says no thanks, or let's scan. If you say yes, you can choose the document language. It's going to give students an estimated amount of time it will take. And then you simply click scan. And then it'll OCR it for you. So I see Disability Resource Office's Accessibility Resource Office still doing this for students for textbooks, for example. But if a faculty is posting something or sending something for students to read, they can do it themselves. Or if they're doing independent research, they're doing it themselves, for example. So this is for schools that don't have every PDF OCR'd, which I've talked to a lot of schools as of the last few years prior to coming to Text Help even. The battle of accessible, readable PDFs with faculty being posted is forever going. And so because of that, this is something that can kind of help move that needle a little bit, at least around access for students. And if you have students kind of across campus using this tool like you have, they may not be able to come to you and say, hey, this article isn't readable. They can't go to their faculty necessarily to say, hey, it's readable. We can put the tools either in the student's hand to make it accessible, readable, or we can even put it in the hands of faculty and say, you have this tool. It's now your responsibility at minimum to make sure that every PDF you have is readable, that it's put online. And this is
There's really not a reason for a faculty, if you have access to this, there's not really a reason for faculty to send it out without having OCR to it.
Bingo. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to create more access on campus, this is an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
It's just that expectation and having faculty follow through with the expectation, which is always the most challenging thing. And I remember that very well.
Herding cats.
Yes, very much so.
But I think, thinking of the Jane Sims, the Center for Institution, what is it? Something learning, like they can incorporate this into some of the Brightspace training that they're doing to when they're creating their content, do this thing and add it to the, I can see this being added to their checklist pretty easily. That would probably be the best way of going about this. Okay.
I can also see some buy-in on like offering to cover part of the cost from their office too, like their office as well, because this is a tool that they can then use as they work with faculty too. Like, I think this is more than, like, we can
Yeah.
market this as more than just student accessibility, like.
When I think about like what a license of Adobe PDF is, like premium that has OCR built in, it used to be like $100 a year. I think they've increased the cost to $400 a year per license. I mean, compared to the cost of this with OCR built in, yeah, you don't get all of the PDF editing features, but for the cost of less than 5 licenses of Adobe, you've got this as an OCR to at least start to move the needle forward on campus. And you're giving students that increased access in their own hands too.
Yes.
Mhm.
Rachel,
One
does
of
it tell you if it failed?
It should tell you if it failed. I don't know why it was just running and running and running. It hasn't done that for me before. But no, I haven't had something like this happen.
I mean, like on the document, I'm sorry, does it
Oh,
say
yeah.
like these 10 words were not readable? Or does it give you, this section didn't work kind of a thing or not really?
No, a lot of that's going to depend on the quality of the scan, which sometimes, they're just crummy scans that faculty have been using forever and ever and ever. And so because of that, it's not going to get it 100%. It's going to get it as good as it will get it based on the quality of the scan type of thing. So something that's pretty clear, like the ones that I was trying to get it to go, should work just fine. Shouldn't miss words. Obviously, if we've got kind of like the spining of the book that curves, that's going to be tougher to do. So. Mhm. One
That's
other
very
thing to mention for you, if faculty are having students take exams online, if they're PDF based, for example, any of the annotation tools can quickly and easily be used to actually complete exams. One of the features that we are building into kind of our next release, and it'll be a feature that you just get as part of your having read and write, is that if a student were to complete this online with Orbit Note, if they send it back to their faculty, the faculty will be able to see all the annotations. So if I'm a student and I need to take an art history test online, I can go through here quickly, maybe this is answer C. I could instead choose to, connect the dots here. I could go through with my shapes, denote true or false. For my essay tests, I could actually sit here, type out my answer or dictate out my answer. And then when I send this to my faculty, they'll be able to see the answer too. So for students who, if they're testing in your office, if they're testing at home and they're needing these tools, I know back when there wasn't always a way for students to easily annotate their exams, they would have listened PDF on